Revolutionary greetings, comrades. It's a red Sunday, the 13th of July 2025. We are discussing the Zimbabwean elections under the theme Know Your Neighbor, Build Your Community. In the last 2-3 videos, we have explained that it is practically impossible to rig elections at the polling stations in Zimbabwe. We've been explaining and will continue to explain that elections can only be rigged in a polling station where the opposition does not have polling agents. Because the ballot boxes are not transported and counted somewhere else. All ballots are counted at a polling station. They are then transported to be kept. So every political party will have access, as has been the case in the past, on the results that are posted outside a polling station. Only when the opposition has failed to fill the polling agents, then you will know that rigging is going to happen. But in this video, we are talking about know your neighbor, build your community. What do we mean by saying know your neighbor, build your community? All of us will live in our communities. We live in our communities. It's a Sunday today. Most Christians are in church. The Bible says, love thy neighbor. We communists have taken it further, saying before you love thy neighbor, you must know who your neighbor is. It's very important. You must know their political affiliation. You must be able to persuade your neighbor in carrying out developmental work in the community. You should be able to persuade your neighbor, not through intimidation, but through dialogue, for your neighbor to see things from your own perspective. When you have a challenge or thieves break into your house or in your home, the first person to know is your neighbor. Your relatives might be living elsewhere else. So the first person to know that you are sick, that thieves broke into your home the previous night, it's your neighbor. And it is your neighbor that looks after your home when you have traveled. So this is why the Bible says, love thy neighbor. And we are saying, know your neighbor. Just communists. So you must know who your neighbor is. You must be in a position to persuade your neighbor. As I've said, to see things from your own perspective. What are these things that your neighbor should see from your own perspective? Is that there's a crisis in Zimbabwe. Myself and my neighbor must agree that indeed there's a crisis in Zimbabwe. A political, economic, social crisis. Right? So that's the first thing that myself and my neighbor must agree on, that there's a crisis. And must further agree that the crisis, particularly the economic crisis, it's as a result, firstly, of the failure by the government of Zimbabwe to transform our society after majority rule. The economy was not placed in the hands of the majority as a whole. Only a few benefit from the national cake. That's the first thing that we identify as the cause of the crisis. That we did not transform our society. In 1980, we ushered in a neo-colonial state, meaning that as we celebrate independence every 18th April, as we sing our national anthem, we are not in charge of our own economy, which has led to young people leaving the country. Some people are now 60. They left the country at 20, 25. They've spent their adulthood in foreign lands. There are people that never worked in Zimbabwe. The second cause of the crisis is the neoliberal policies that were introduced by the Zimbabwean government in 1991, the Economic Structural Adjustment Program, ESAP. The third is corruption and nepotism. So we should be able with my neighbor to have this dialogue, to have this discussion, to say we are victims of a government that failed to transform our society, that introduced the Economic Structure Adjustment Program, ESAP, that resulted in the closure of industries, a government that refuses to address corruption, a government that appoints people in strategic positions or employ people in strategic positions based on nepotism. People are not qualified for the jobs. And as a result, we have this economic crisis. So that's the discussion that myself and my neighbor must agree on as part of our dialogue. This is why we're saying, know your neighbor. Why are we having this discussion with my neighbor? Why are you having this discussion with your own neighbor? Is that we want to build our community. We want to have access in our community, access to clean drinking water. That's what we want. Whether we are in the villages, whether we are in cities, we want access to clean drinking water. We want to at least have 3 meals a day. We want our children to have good education. We want access to housing. We want access to power, be it electricity, solar power, or power driven through solar, and we want internet. There are people that for the last 3 years or last 5 years, they've never bought new clothes. They've never bought new clothes. Some, the last decade, they've never bought new clothes. They buy old clothes, Kokotam. So we want access to clothing. We want to buy clothes for ourselves, for our families, because we cannot build our community when we don't have clothes. It's winter time when we don't have blankets, when we don't have housing, when we can't take our kids to school to receive quality education, when we can't go to a clinic to be treated when we're sick or to a hospital. So this is the conversation that myself and my neighbor, yourself and your neighbor must have. This is why we start by saying, know your neighbor, build your community. We want reliable transport. We don't want to drive on potholes, roads that are made up of potholes, where potholes are littered all over. We want affordable, reliable transport in our community. There are people who live about 50 kilometers away from a city. They wake up at 2 a.m. To wait for a public transport to ferry them to the city. It takes about 4 hours. Why does it take 4 hours to travel to the city? It's because of the roads, just 50 kilometers. So when we say know your neighbor, build your community, we are saying first and foremost, myself and my neighbor must have this conversation and agreeing that all these problems, these challenges that we are having, it doesn't matter your neighbor's political affiliation, is that the cause of all this is a political leadership that cares about itself. In other words, an uncaring political leadership. Because your neighbor might be a member of ZANU-PF, they are told that it is Western powers that have contributed to the destruction of our economy. But they will not tell you, if you're a member of ZANU-PF, that there's massive corruption, particularly in the mining sector. A new elite has emerged. You know them, they buy people vehicles. I saw someone was pouring 6,000 US dollars whiskey on a wash. When was the last time you had 6,000 US dollars? But some who are beneficiary of a system are just playing around, buying liquor worth about 6,000 US dollars. When we have no medication in our hospitals, when teachers cannot be in class because they are not being paid, when potholes are all over. So as I conclude, we are saying, let us have this conversation as neighbors about the state of our own community. You might be in Mbare, you might not be having access to clean water, you might not be having power, Your litter might not be collected. You might be in Chimanimani. You have your own set of problems. So we're saying the first thing as we talk about the Zimbabwean elections is that we must have dialogue as neighbors. We must know each other. Once we know each other, we must talk about how we should build our community. And talking about building our community, we must all agree that the government in power has failed us. Whether you're a member of ZANU-PF, whether you're a member of Triple C, you are a member of ZAPU, you are a member of ZCP, you are a member of MRP, ZANU-PF government has failed all of us. And it is in our interest that you begin to develop strategies as a community of saying, how then do we resolve these problems? We'll discuss in the next video on how we must, as a community, ensure that you have access to all the basic needs that I've spoken about. We are not talking about having luxury vehicles. We are not talking about building mansions in our communities. No. We simply want the basic services. Please write in the comment section, like this video. If you are new in this platform, please kindly subscribe. Otherwise, Amandla Comrades, Red Salute. Know your neighbor, build